Oh, he's in Abuja or where?
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The southeastern parts of Nigeria have been something of a boiling pot ever since Nnamdi Kanu, the now imprisoned leader of the proscribed indigenous peoples of Biafra, launched his separatist agenda a few years ago. Things took a turn for the worse when he was arrested and charged by the Nigerian government for subversive activities. Just this past week, Kanu was finally committed to prison, having been found guilty on all of the 7 charges preferred against him by the state. As the dust begins to settle on this matter, many are wondering how his elimination from the public life can begin to affect the security and political trajectory of the Southeast geopolitical zone. Joining us now to have a conversation around all of this is Dr. Uzo Ngoladi, Secretary General, Forum for Southeast Academic Doctors. Good morning and thank you for joining on the show, Dr. Uzo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to know first.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to know first your immediate reaction to the life imprisonment sentence handed to Nnamdi Kanu and your opinion of what this verdict represents. Do you believe it represents justice or a missed opportunity for dialogue? I know that, many Nigerians, especially those in the Southeast, have expressed concern over what they, see as an uneven application of justice. And, some have described Nnamdi Kanu's life sentence as a glaring example of the federal government's uneven application of justice when compared to other cases of armed agitation, especially, from terrorists in the north.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on the life imprisonment of Nnamdi Kanu, whereby the court have found him guilty. So I'll be speaking for the Southeast and, all the people who have been hopeful that this judgment would kind of be a relief whereby Nnamdi Kanu will be released. So the feeling generally is that of disappointment and disillusionment. And it cuts across all the socioeconomic status in the Southeast. Both the political leaders, thought leaders, elites, the academia, the average citizen in the Southeast, the Igbo, you can feel their that sense of disappointment. You can see that graveyard silence. You know that Igbos generally are not known to be violent people. We are more business inclined. The Igbo land has the highest number of entrepreneurs. So we are not violent people. And since that verdict was handed down to Nnamdi Kanu on Friday, they've been waiting to see the next step. The Igbo man does not believe that Nnamdi Kanu is a terrorist. In fact, as a matter of fact, they view Nnamdi Kanu as an agitator, a freedom fighter. They see his ideologies as that of someone who is a catalyst for change, who is fighting for the marginalization of Igbo within the political space of Nigeria. So everyone was hopeful, even though we are still keeping the hope alive, believing that his matter will be resolved politically instead of this punitive measure, which has not really helped the matter. As a matter of fact, the judgment has increased the followership of Nnamdi Kanu. A lot of Southeasterners who were before now were kind of indifferent to the matter. There's an awareness now that, look, what this man is calling for, his ideologies, they are within his rights, calling for self-determination. It's not terrorism. We do not see Nnamdi Kanu as a terrorist. The elites, the political leaders in the Southeast have been speaking, they have been putting out statements. And we are glad that he has drawn enough attention to himself and to his plight, that everybody now is coming together to stand united and speak with one voice that, look, we should rally around him and believe in his cause. So the general feeling is that of disappointment. We are all hopeful that Nnamdi Kanu will be released. And like the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Benjamin Kano, the way he appealed to Igbos in his statement, I read it, and he called for calm. We have seen Bianco Ojukwu calling for calm too. We have seen the governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Oti, asking everybody to calm down, that the Southeast governors would try their possible best to ensure that a political solution is applied to Nnamdi Kanu's case. So everybody believes that, everybody in the Southeast especially, believes that this is selective justice, that he has not committed any crime, and that calling for self-determination cannot be interpreted to be a terrorist act.
All right, Dr. Ngoladi, thank you for setting the tone for the conversation. I'd like to ask you two questions. First will be to know what sort of political solution you will be looking for, you'll be hoping for, or that you think that the Southeast governors and those who are supporting Kanu's cause will be working towards. Will it be to let the law run its course? Because, of course, Kanu will have the opportunity to appeal the verdict, and that if it goes all the way to Supreme Court, maybe possibly appeal to the conscience of the president for the sort of clemency that he granted a few people a few weeks ago. Will that be the option that you'll be looking at, since you have highlighted that a political solution was still possible? The second part of my question will be to ask you if you have any message to the families of many people who reports claim were killed, some, badly massacred on account of the orders that Kanu allegedly issued in many of his broadcasts. As you may be aware, 99% of such people are also of Igbo extraction in Igbo land. What do you say to those? Their families who have lost, loved ones who were killed, many instances over several years, on account of the fact that Nnamdi Kanu allegedly issued direct instructions to have them exterminated if they flouted his orders. Civilians, police officers, military personnel, etc. What do you say to those people on account of this judgment now?
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, let me commend the Southeast governors and other political leaders in the Southeast who have been trying their best, including traditional rulers, to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu is released from DSS custody and pardoned. So we are looking at a presidential pardon, where everybody would come together at the negotiation table. And even if it's a conditional release, let him be released. I believe that that would douse the tension in the Southeast, and that the economic and social activities that has been negatively affected by Nnamdi Kanu's incarcerations. And let me make it clear that Nnamdi Kanu has consistently disowned the sit-at-home order. And that what actually happened is that some criminal elements, non-state actors, have taken advantage of his detention to unleash mayhem on people in the Southeast. And Southeasterners, majority of them has consistently deny the fact that it's Nnamdi Kanu that gave direct orders for people to be massacred. And I wouldn't want to use that word massacre, because what we find in the Southeast is just a kind of spillover of the heightened insecurity in Nigeria, whereby people are being kidnapped and are killed and all whatnot in some states of the Southeast. The sit-at-home order is more or less like a solidarity to Nnamdi Kanu, who has been in custody now for a couple of years. Well, I sympathize with families that have lost loved ones in the Southeast. But like I said before, majority of Igbo does not view Nnamdi Kanu as a terrorist. They see him from that prism of someone who is drawing attention to the marginalization of his people, a catalyst for change, who wants the Igbo people to be carried along in the scheme of things in Nigeria. When it comes to infrastructure and political appointments, where you notice that the Igbos have been, openly marginalized, whereby what should come naturally to Igbo people, they are not, Igbos are not carried along in the Southeast, and that is what he's fighting for. And I believe that if before now the federal government, the government at the center, have paid attention to what Nnamdi Kanu is agitating for, it wouldn't have escalated to this level, whereby he's being imprisoned. Recall that during the Niger Delta struggle, during the administration of Yar'Adua, the federal government waded into the matter by bringing the Niger Delta militants to a round table, and the discussions were held, and the matter was settled amicably without kinetic force. The Yar'Adua called for dialogue, and all of us can see the resultant effects of that dialogue. So when another geopolitical zone or another region of the country is agitating for something, I believe that the federal government should give them a listening ear, at least. Bring them to the round table. You know what they are agitating for. We proffer solutions. It's always better to judge than to war. The punitive measure that has been handed down to Nnamdi Kanu, I don't think it has solved the problem. There will be a lot of security and political implications, whereby non-state actors may want to take advantage of it, especially when it comes to Monday sit-at-home order, which the governors have made a lot of effort. Normalcy was gradually returning. So this would kind of, reduce the efforts of the Southeast governors, who we believe have done their best to ensure that economic activities and social activities go on every Monday. We know the amount of the huge economic losses that the sit-at-home order on Mondays has caused the Southeast. So I think that we should all come together for a political solution. And the first political solution I'm looking at is that there should be a presidential pardon. Yes, his lawyer has made it clear that they are going to appeal the matter, and may also, from the appeal court, they may also go to the Supreme Court. I don't want this matter to continue to escalate to the appeal court and to the Supreme Court. Why don't we come together and listen to Nnamdi Kanu and say, okay, what do you want? Let's negotiate. That's my point.
All right. So do you believe that now with Kanu in permanent custody, do you foresee an escalation or de-escalation of the security challenges in the Southeast, particularly concerning, the Eastern Security Network, a group that, the federal government's prosecutor say they have been condemned to death. They are going to be given a death penalty. And, you made mention about, the Southeasterners not seeing Nnamdi Kanu as a terrorist. Prosecutors cited broadcasts that he allegedly made calling for, a killing of soldiers and, our security forces. Do you see this as a terrorist act? I mean, many soldiers, I believe, died after that incident. Did you see it as a terrorist act?
Yes, you're very correct. Yes, you are very correct. But we know the genesis of terrorism in Nigeria. It did not start from the Southeast. We all know how it started. We know that even before now, there has been massacres. There has been massacres in other parts of the country. We know that, for instance, the Chibok schoolgirls who were abducted up till now, and the recent abductions of students in the boarding schools in Kebbi State, in Niger State of recent, and the attack on the church in Kwara State. Then there has been several attacks in Plateau State, in Kaduna. We have seen a situation where bandits were even alleged to be paid. They are under the payroll of the federal government. We have seen negotiation with bandits. And also, we have seen other certain individuals from other parts of the country call for a revolution. We have seen people from Rivers State, from the South, also threatening to shoot down military aircrafts and all whatnot. And majority of these people, we have seen another individual, also call for self-secession, for self-determination and secession for the Dudua Republic. And all these individuals, the feeling in the Southeast now is that all of them were, they had a part on the wrist for what they said, though we don't support it. I don't see Nnamdi Kanu as a terrorist. I have to state that again. And I'm speaking for the Southeasterners because we have felt the pulse of the people. They just see him as a freedom fighter, as an agitator who wants the best for his people, though his approach may not be in the right direction. So the punitive measure of life imprisonment that has been handed down to him, we believe that it should not be. The same way there was negotiations and other certain individuals who were released from prison, the same should also be given to Nnamdi Kanu in order not to escalate tensions in the Southeast. Because right now, normalcy have returned to the Southeast. Like I said before, the Southeasterners are not violent people. The insecurity challenges that we have seen there is a general insecurity that we have seen in the country, which is caused by the high rate of unemployment and poverty, hyperinflation, the bad leadership, and all whatnot. So all of this cannot be, Nnamdi Kanu should not be held responsible for the insecurity that we have noticed in the Southeast in the recent past, and which the governors are trying their best to tackle. So I believe that Nnamdi Kanu should also be given that opportunity that was given to other people of his kind who were also fighting for their people.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ngoladi. I like the fact that you said that we should bring into focus the context and the history of violent agitations and terrorism in Nigeria, which, as you rightly alluded to, didn't start from the Southeast. And therefore, I would like to ask you, at what point do you think that Nnamdi Kanu's ideology flipped from being a very moderate Nigerian at least in the early to mid-90s. If you recall that there was one major protest right in front of the Nigerian embassy in London. It was part of that protest. The protest was against terrorism in the northeastern part of the country. Nnamdi Kanu was part of that protest against it, and to affirm that Nigerians, and he did identify himself as a Nigerian, were wholeheartedly opposed to the idea of the mayhem and the terror that was going on in the Southeast. At what point, therefore, do you think that his ideology flipped to the extent that he was now asking for a lot more for the Southeast, not just asking for, like you said the other time, not just asking for things to be better, he was basically asking that the nation of Biafra should stand alone. You recall all the names that he called Nigeria. At what point do you think that things changed in him, so much so that he attributed so much power to himself, saying that he had the power of life and death, and that thousands and millions of lives, were in his hands? What do you think triggered that sort of extreme behavior, the type that you have described as not being the best, even though you see him as a freedom fighter? And then if you can add this to it, what's his name? Simon Ekpa was sentenced in Finland on account of, similar charges. Were you truly expecting that Nnamdi Kanu would be spared of all the allegations against him?
Well, I want to point out that since his detention in custody, there has been escalations, and non-state actors and criminal elements have taken advantage of it to unleash mayhem on the Southeast, and they are using his incarceration as a justification for their dastardly acts. So while I'm not exonerating Nnamdi Kanu entirely from his actions and his broadcasts, I'm also drawing attention to the fact that the government should have engaged him in a constructive dialogue to find solutions to the problems that the myriad of problems that is affecting the Igbo man in Nigeria. That Southeasterners are being marginalized, and he is asking for self-determination. His pro-Biafra sentiments would have been doused if we had that conversation, if he was constructively engaged. And let's also look at what are his ideologies. What are his reasons for always having his broadcasts where he will call out Nigeria and whatnot? Is there does he have some merit in what he is saying? So when you analyze this, if you scrutinize his ideologies, at least you can see some elements of truth in what he is saying. Like I said before, his approach may be wrong, but we have seen people who have done worse for the country. For instance, we have seen people in the northern part of Nigeria where the massacre took place. We have seen the Zangon Kataf riots. We have seen the Rehad Bonke crusade, where a lot of people were killed. We have seen the Boko Haram, the bandits, and all whatnot. What they are doing in the south, in the north of Nigeria, and nobody has been brought to book. That is not to justify what they are doing, but we have to also ensure there's fairness, there's justice, because the feeling today is that the life sentence that was handed down to Nnamdi Kanu is selective justice. It's quite selective, because we are here in Nigeria, and we also observe what is going on in the country. I don't think that. Personally, these are my own views now. I don't think that he deserves that life imprisonment sentence. There should have been a way to, like the governors of the Southeast and the political leaders have been, trying to wade into the matter. There should have been a political solution. That's all I'm saying. We are not justifying the killings. We are not saying the killings should go on. We are not supporting his manner of approach. We are just saying that since it has come to this, and we have seen this happen, several times in other geopolitical zones of the country, our own in the Southeast should not be different. He should also be afforded that opportunity for a political solution.
Right. And do you believe that, the violence in the Southeast should stop in order to enable this political solution conversation to begin?
Yes, that is our appeal. Even at the Forum of Southeast Academic Doctors, we put out a statement, calling for calm, calling for good reasoning. And we didn't even need to do that much, because since that Friday, we've not heard of any protests. Imagine if Nnamdi Kanu were to come from the north, there would have been violent protests right now. But you can see that in the Igbo land, everywhere is calm, right. Even though tomorrow will be the first Monday that we'll experience after his life imprisonment. The projections are that the Igbo man is non-violent, the Igbo man is calm, and we are still very hopeful that there will be a political solution to Nnamdi Kanu's plight.
All right. On that note, Dr. Ngoladi, would like to thank you very much for joining us on the morning show this morning.